Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Central Pennsylvania Shrimp Tank, brought to you from our temporary studio here in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. I'm your host today, Nathan Imboden, and we're continuing our series called In the Crosshairs of Corona. So today we have a very special guest. Her name is Claudia Williams. She runs a company called the Human Zone, and some of our other guests, we've had kind of a hybrid where they run a business, but also consult with or interact with other businesses. And that's Claudia today. And we say all the time on this show, we want to teach the message of entrepreneurship, good, bad, and ugly. We're in one of those times where it's a little dicey, especially here in Pennsylvania, where businesses have seen a lot of restrictions and regulations thrown on them. It's been a bit challenging to navigate. So we're going to have her come on here in a minute, but I want to remind everybody, go to our website, shrimptankpodcast.com/CentralPA for all of these episodes and our previous ones. We're doing more full episodes around businesses and entrepreneurship. Also, be sure to like our Facebook page, and anywhere you can subscribe to a podcast app, search for the Central PA Shrimp Tank, click that subscribe button and stay up to date on all of these episodes. Now, without further ado, we're going to bring Claudia on, Lady in White. That's a great color on you, by the way. I didn't say that earlier. I should have started with that. But Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nathan. I was just trying to coordinate with you today.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, the irony is, if I wear dark because of the camera, it auto focuses on the dark, and then my face gets washed out. So I have to wear light colors for color purposes. But I guess it just means I'm not tan enough. That's the reality. If I was a little darker, I'd probably be okay. But we'll see. Well, why don't you give a quick intro, maybe on the Human Zone? I know that's just kind of one element. There's a couple layers of things that you do and offer, but talk about the Human Zone and maybe how you've had to pivot yourself as a business, starting back to middle of March, I guess it was, when all these shutdown orders and stay-at-home orders came down.
Sure. Actually, March was the 5-year anniversary for my business.
Okay.
So just as I thought I'd be celebrating 5 years, I found myself in the position of many other business owners, which was saying, okay, wow. So I am a consultant, like you said, and I help businesses solve problems, and I help them work with their leaders to make them better able to anticipate challenges and solve problems they don't even know they have yet. So I help them help their leaders be better leaders and tee them up for future success. And I'm also, a huge part of what I do is public speaking, and I have workplace training programs. As you can imagine, that came to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
And so half of my business stopped overnight. At the same time, the other half of my business, the business coaching and the executive coaching, leadership coaching, that ramped up so quickly and became a 24/7 business.
Yeah.
So half of my business kept me busy all the time in crisis mode. And that's what I had to do, right? So I had clients who needed me more than they needed me during a time when it felt like the best I could do was take all of this information that was swirling around and try to piece it all together like pieces of a puzzle. And it's not about solving the problem or giving them answers, right? Because no one was able to do that.
Right.
But it was about saying, okay, look, here's what's happening. Here's what government is doing. Here's what experts are saying. And I'm just going to compile this information for you. And I'm going to try to provide it to you in a concise resource. Yeah. So you're getting bombarded with information. I'm just going to try to compile it all for you and send it to you in a concise format every day.
Yep.
So that you don't have to feel as overwhelmed as I'm sure you all feel right now. And so that's a big part of what I did.
Great.
And then I brought my clients together a couple of times a week on 90-minute Zoom calls, much like this, and said, let's just talk. Let's talk about what you're experiencing. Let's talk about the questions you have, and let's be there for each other.
Yeah.
And then we rounded up subject matter experts and said, okay, you're all having the same types of questions. Let's find the experts and I'll bring them to you. And we'll talk with experts, whether it's about PPP loans or, the decisions you need to make. Let's talk about the new laws that are being passed. I don't know this stuff. We don't all know all this stuff. So we'll find the experts. We'll bring them to you.
Yeah.
And so it was about trying to keep up and trying to anticipate. And so that was a big part of how I had to shift.
Had you done much in the way of that type of group format with these coaching, with the coaching you were doing, or was that mainly individual and this was just a good way to be able to adapt and provide resources to a larger number of people in a short period of time?
Well, part of what I do is that I'm a Vistage chair and Vistage is just that.
Yeah.
So as a Vistage chair, we do meet as a group every month, and I meet individually with each member of Vistage. So Vistage is that type of community.
Yeah.
It's a peer organization. And so because of that format, it was a really natural shift to say, okay, we do this every month, but because of the times, we need to get together more frequently.
Yeah.
And so initially, and when we were meeting on a monthly basis, it's a full day meeting.
Yep.
Full day is, under these circumstances at that time in the middle of March, full day, too long.
Yeah.
And once a month, not frequently enough.
Yeah.
So it's short chunks more frequently.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's how we initiated things.
Yeah. Interesting. And you talked earlier about helping to prepare leaders for challenges that are going to arise and, being able to pivot and do all that kind of stuff. Because this came, well, in theory, it felt like it came not out of nowhere, but it was sudden, right? It was very rapid and everything that we had to deal with was very, very quick. How many businesses that you were dealing with do you feel were prepared? And this isn't a knock against them. It's just an idea of around crisis planning in general, because we talk about doing that. But I guess in some cases you feel like there's only so much you can do. You can't plan for every possible thing that could go wrong, but you can do as best as you can. So how did you feel like businesses were prepared for this, even though nobody necessarily had written in their handbooks COVID-19 emergency plan before now?
Exactly. Yeah. So actually, I listened to an interview with the CEO of Ford the other day, and he said no one had a pandemic business plan.
Yeah.
But one of the things I'm really proud of is that in the work that I did at our February Vistage meetings, one of the things that we discussed was crisis planning, crisis business planning, because part of my job is to pay attention to what's happening, because I know that CEOs and business leaders have so much going on. Part of my job is to pay attention to external things and to just, like I said, I can't solve for everything, but I'm supposed to keep my finger on the pulse and bring things to their attention that might impact their business.
Yeah.
So I was paying attention to this. And at our February meeting, I talked about and raised the question of, hey, who around the table here does crisis business planning? And so I watched some hands go up, and we got into a more in-depth discussion around what those crisis plans look like. And then we talked specifically about a pandemic as a potential. And we talked about the coronavirus loosely, but it was more in the context of, well, what happens if your business is shut down? And it could be shut down by any number of things. Like, what if a fire burns your physical building down and no one can go to your building to work? Are you prepared to work remotely? Yeah. And what do those things look like? And so it was about business disruption in general. And that's what got them thinking. For those who had it, it got them revisiting their plans. And for those who didn't, it got them thinking about it. And so the mindset was there.
Yeah.
And so as March and April began rolling, they were talking about how that February discussion had begun to prepare them for something that they perhaps weren't otherwise prepared for. And so that was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know, and you were, I would say pretty early on, you were expressing concern about the impact that this is potentially going to have here in the United States. It was early when it was still, at least from a testing measurement, I think I would argue it's been circulating in our country since probably late last year, and we didn't realize it. But seeing what was happening over in China and that the part of the world, and eventually coming over here, so whether it was, I mean, it was very fortuitous, I would say, for you to bring that up, and what a great resource to bring to the businesses that you're working with to help answer those questions, which, probably a side note, is a great, I think, reminder of why organizations and groups like Vistage are so key, because you have somebody else who is looking out for your best interests, but paying attention to things that you might not even be thinking about, and then bringing them to the table to help you just run a better business. So I think it's a huge shout out to what Vistage and what a chair like yourself is designed to do.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, look, on the one hand, it sucks, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
But it's the principle of what are the things we can plan for that seem improbable or impossible or unlikely, but that have the potential to really disrupt us.
Yeah.
And that's really what a crisis plan is all about. And then you need to test those plans. And I learned that from working at the Hershey Company, because I was part of crisis planning scenarios there. And so that's just something I carry forward in my consulting practice.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's kind of fast forward to today, or at least I'd say recently. I know you're still engaging with all the business owners that you're engaging with. What are some of the concerns or issues they are dealing with right now? Specifically, let's just start there. What are some of the, I think, top of mind things or issues that they're dealing with?
I think one of the most interesting and challenging and difficult things about this is that this is the first time in their life as a leader and a business owner when someone else is telling them what they can and cannot do with their business.
Yeah. And by nature, we don't like that, right? We did what we started because we don't like people telling us what to do. So yeah, it's a tough. Yeah.
Yes. And so now we have multiple government entities saying you have to close your business, or your business can only operate under these particular set of circumstances. So that's the first thing. So someone else is putting any number of restrictions on the operation of a business that the business owner or president or CEO is used to being in 100% control of. So there's that. And then it's how do we go forward and run a business in the face of all of this uncertainty? And so now it's planning in the face of uncertainty, which is the number one challenge that I'm hearing from business leaders.
Yeah.
How do we plan for what we don't know is or isn't going to happen going forward?
Right. All right, I'll put you on the spot if you don't mind. Briefly, what do you say to that? Because it's a good question. All right, well, I don't know what to expect. So, and when I don't know what to expect, there's any number of things that could happen, widely from next to nothing to the worst. And how do we plan around that, right? So do you have any general guidance you're giving when to ask that question?
Yeah, the first is take control of what you can control. So you have a whole bunch of information and data within your control. You have customer information, you have vendor information, you have employee information, you have financial information. Wrap your head around all of the information you have within your control and understand it front to back. And we also now have the benefit of a little bit of several weeks of hindsight, and we have the benefit of some go forward information. We understand, at least in Pennsylvania, we understand what red, yellow, and green phases look like.
Right.
We understand, at least we should understand right now, that there's going to be some some bit of, okay, we're going to go yellow, there's going to be some green at some point, there's probably going to be some bouncing back and forth between yellow, red, yellow, green, yellow, right? We should anticipate these things.
Yep.
And so we take all the information that we know and understand, and you talk through what all of the potential scenarios are. And the reality is we have to plan for multiple scenarios.
Right.
And we map out courses for what all of those scenarios might look like. Are you going to have a perfect plan? No,
Right. No.
Probably not. But having some type of action plan for each of the possible scenarios is better than having nothing.
Right. But don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Exactly. And so if you have something and you have a deep understanding of all of the information you have within your control, for example, and I'll just give one really specific example.
Okay.
If you know you have a customer that is potentially not going to survive this economic financial crisis,
Yeah.
that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
And that's a threat to your continued financial success. So you have to have a strategy for how to manage that financial impact to your business.
Yeah.
And so you need to be planning now for that. So that's why you need to understand who your customers are and what that means for how you need to shift your business.
Yeah. I know in our business, a lot of the individuals we work with are 60 or older. And by definition, that puts them at least from a guideline standpoint, a higher risk individual. So that's a big part of what we're looking at as we think about a reopening strategy and what's that going to look like. But 70+% of the people we work with fit that category. So but you're absolutely right. Knowing the data you can control, and at least, even though we may not agree with, some people may not agree with what it takes to get to yellow and what is in, what you can do in yellow and all that. At least we know what they are, and you can build a plan. All right, if we get to yellow, here's what we can do. If we get to green, here's what we can do. But if we go back to yellow, we know how we adapt to get back to yellow because we know the parameters of what we're able to do. As long as those goalposts don't change, which unfortunately has happened in different things many times, which makes it almost to the point of making it impossible to plan for everything. But as long as those parameters don't change, we have somewhat of a framework to be able to bounce back and forth.
True. And look, and as a business owner or an executive, it's really important to understand that there's a time and a place to focus on how we feel about what's happening.
Right.
And so it's important that the business planning pieces of this, that we don't get too caught up in how we feel about this politically or how we, right? So we almost have to get really good at compartmentalizing the pieces of this too.
Right.
And say, okay, this is the time where I really have to focus on the business decisions I have to make. And when I achieve what I need to achieve in that space, then I can focus on venting and getting out how I feel about this emotionally and politically and everything else. But I can't let that hold me back from making the decisions I need to make for my business and my employees. Because I've also seen it, I've seen the political and emotional overtake in some cases and hold people back from moving forward with the business. And it's so understandable.
Yeah.
But we have to get good at compartmentalizing at certain times too.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. That's something, a good friend of mine has a passion project of communication training, and one of his goals, because of how divisive and politicized. Hey, your office manager's
Here
back.
comes my office manager.
What a great mention. I would have to say fashionably late. That is amazing.
Yes, this is Katie. She's my office manager, and I do leave the door open purposefully, so I'm sorry for the disruption.
Oh my gosh, no, this is perfect. I love this. It's genuine. It's genuine. But anyways, one of his missions is to try to help reshape how we communicate as people. And unfortunately, when it gets emotional or political, it seems like it's less about conversing and more about just wanting to ram an opinion down somebody's
Mhm.
throat to get somebody to believe them. And that's a big challenge we face. And that leads to separate issues with, as you're pointing, compartmentalizing. While I may believe one thing, my employees may believe something else. My clients and customers may believe something completely different. And I need to be aware of that and
Mhm.
learning how to absorb, take everything in, but compartmentalize and say, look, my business has to focus on how do I run my business, not if I'm right or left or this is a conspiracy or not, whatever it is, right? It doesn't,
Yep.
should not impact how you actually run your business. It should be agnostic to that. So that's a
Yep.
great tip, a great tip. Well, as I've said, I think I told you before this, what I like to try to do is make sure we end, and you've been unbelievably positive. So this is, I would say, stacking on to the positivity. But do you have any examples of either organizations that have just done something above and beyond, whether it's positively impacting their employee group or, just something they've done in the community or whatnot, that's really been a shining moment in this period of time?
So the the story that comes to mind first, I actually work with a pretty amazing company. Sekisui Kydex is, they are a thermoplastics manufacturer.
Okay.
And so what their, one of their primary client is the airline industry.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine when this crisis began, how that impacted their business initially.
Yeah.
And they're also a Vistage member, and they've been a Vistage member for a long time. Within 4 days, they were able to shift from airline industry as the primary customer to serving and partnering with the likes of Ford and other manufacturing companies to create PPE.
Oh, wow.
So in 4 days, they, and it was such a monumental shift that an executive from Ford said, when this is all over, we want to come and meet you. And they're in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, and they
Awesome.
have a plant in Michigan as well.
Okay.
Home base is in their parent company is in Japan.
Okay.
But they said, we want to come and meet you in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, because we really want to understand how you were able to make this shift. And so they've been able to keep people working, and they are supporting their local community by bringing in food from the restaurants in Bloomsburg to feed their employees every day.
Awesome.
And they're providing additional compensation in the form of crisis pay, hazard pay for employees.
Mhm.
And they're really going above and beyond to support their workers during this whole period of time as well. And it's been really amazing to see what they've been able to do. And that's just one of so many great things that I work with such wonderful people.
Yeah.
And the way they have been continuing to come together through this whole period of time to say, it's almost like one of them said it best. The whole idea of competition kind of went away during this period of time.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that we all need to get through this together. So it's not about competition anymore, because we all need to survive this. And so we're going to share everything that we're doing, because it might help you and you, because we're all in it together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point, because nobody has said that directly, but yeah, when you think about it, it isn't about, especially in the business community, it's not about competition anymore, and nobody is rooting for anybody's business to fail because of this. At least nobody that I know. There may be some people out there that are doing that, but yeah, that's awesome. What a great example.
Even in the Vistage community, the whole premise behind Vistage is that you get together and it's a non-competitive industry meeting. So you can only have one member of an industry around the table.
Yep.
Well, my colleague, another Vistage chair, Chad Harvey, and I, we teamed up. And so every Friday we've been getting our combined Vistage groups all together. We each chair 2 groups. So we have 4 Vistage groups getting together every Friday for the last several weeks. And the whole idea of that non-competitive thing, it went out the window for that very reason, where we said, look, the more people sharing right now, the better. They all collectively agreed that, look, it's the whole idea of competition. It's out the window.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great example of that. Chad's a great individual, so awesome to allow you guys to be able to do that, come together. And I think that just grows the value because you get more opinions. Well, there can't be too many cooks in the kitchen in some cases, but you're getting more opinions of people that are in the trenches dealing with stuff than probably a lot of similar issues that are going across the board that they're able to work through.
That's really that's the subject matter expert meetings, where we're bringing the experts in to talk to them and give them an opportunity to ask questions and sharing resources. We're basically pooling our resources for the sake of the greater good in our community, and it's worked out really well.
Awesome. Well, keep doing all the good work, Claudia. You're doing a fantastic job, and I think inspiring to help businesses just continue to think, how do we get through this? How do we thrive through this, get on the back end, and be better prepared in the future, so that with anything that we encounter, we know we can pivot. Even just, I think, having that knowledge of, yes, we can, and doing it is power in and of itself. And so having a resource like you in their corner is awesome. So for people who are out there who are maybe thinking, I don't have that, I could use that, and they maybe want to talk to you, what's the best way for them to either learn about your business or get in contact with you?
They can go to humanzonebiz.com or give me a call at 717-695-1798, or email me at claudiawilliams@humanzonebiz.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure to have that info as well in our post, so that people can, if they're following through there, just directly get in contact with you there. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit here and give some insight to how you're helping organizations, but also what the businesses are going through. And again, for continuing to be a tremendous resource to us and everybody you're working with. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nathan. I really appreciate it. And I know that you are working really hard to do great things for your clients during this time too. And the importance of having a handle on your financial resources and making how important those financial plans are. I know you've been working really, really hard to help people make sure that aspect of their lives is in order. And I can't emphasize enough how important that is. So thank you for all you're doing in that area too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I appreciate that. Well, everybody at home, that was, again, Claudia Williams with the Human Zone. Some just knockout tips on how to be prepared, how to pivot. Also, a theme we're hearing from a number of individuals we're interviewing is, don't be afraid to ask for help, but also don't be afraid to consult help. Coaches, individuals, groups like Vistage are a great way to network and interact with other peers, and to create kind of that mastermind to help people around you to help get through these times and provide additional guidance. So I'd encourage you to look into either groups or organizations like that if you haven't. The Vistage is a great place to start, and if you're not eligible for one of their groups because they're full, they could be a good resource to get you somewhere else. So again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Central PA Shrimp Tank.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond.